welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. I'll be your astrologer this week. This is going to be the astro weather for April 14th through the 21st, 2024. If you guys like my content and you want to see more of it, make sure you click that bell button below, subscribe to the channel, and consider leaving me a comment or a thumbs up, especially if you find this content helpful. I love hearing from you guys and it really helps the channel grow. So please do consider interacting with this video or sharing with someone who might find it interesting. Well guys, we have a very big week ahead. It may not look at it on the surface, but to me, this almost seems like a part 2 of the solar eclipse in Aries. Now I'm going to take you through the transits for the week ahead. We're going to talk about some of the major events taking place day by day and how to manage with some of these kind of crazy energies. Pretty much, rock, rattle, and roll all week long. We're going to see lots of activations to this most recent solar eclipse in Aries that we saw on April 8th. So we'll be seeing conjunctions and retrograde points that are activating that solar eclipse. So as many of you guys know, a solar eclipse plays out sometimes over months or years. So we're going to see a number of different activation points, but this week seems especially important as both Venus and Mercury reactivate that 19 degrees of Aries. So if you have any personal placements like a sun, moon, rising, or any other planet anywhere around 18 to I would say about 20 degrees of Aries, this is going to be a very active week ahead for you. Now, outside of these specific activations that we're seeing, we are also going to have one of the biggest astrological aspects in all of 2024, the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in the sign of Taurus. Now, I've done a lot of videos on this. There's several on the channel. I'm sure we will touch on this throughout this video and possibly again in this next month. But this is a really powerful seeding moment where Jupiter, god of abundance, growth, anything that deals with laws and freedom, or even like our beliefs, is going to become conjunct exactly with 21 degrees of Uranus in Taurus. So we've got Uranus in Taurus. Uranus is known as the great disruptor. So we are going to be definitely seeing some pretty radical things taking place from this conjunction for the next several weeks and months ahead, as these two archetypes come together and create some kind of growth with financial turbulence, resources, banking institutions, anything revolving around food. But in your own personal life, it may be a turning point in some significant period of feeling like you're ready to evolve, you're ready to break free. And like I said, this is seeded. So not all of us will experience the true effects of this particular conjunction in the day that it happens. Likely we'll see over the next several months that there is some kind of, unexpected curveball or opportunity for sudden wealth, resources, growth that kind of take place. You'll have to look at where Taurus is in your chart. Now, this is a part of the activation points with the eclipse energy, but we are going to see Venus in Aries this week come into conjunction with Chiron, bringing up themes that deal with healing, wounding in relationships, but also the relationship to self. So we can be feeling a little bit of sensitivity when this conjunction happens, especially because Venus has associations with the South Node in Libra, where we are undoing and breaking away from old, outdated ways of relating to other people. But Venus also has connections to Taurus. So it's the dispositor of this, Jupiter-Uranus kind of conjunction that's happening, where lots of people are waking up and realizing some harsh truths about the world, about resources, and also about their own value system. So we'll be seeing that. And then to top it all off, the week is going to close out with the Sun in Taurus square Pluto in Aquarius, where things get a little intense. We're going to see some financial pressure as this is setting up at 2 degrees, but it definitely seems to indicate that there is something that we are like battling or kind of combating this week that deals with power. Power is going to be a big theme. And whether this is actual power like electricity, because Pluto is in Aquarius, power revolving around the internet and how we connect to one another, or powers relating to what we can and cannot possess. physical resources like land or food or things revolving around our personal bank accounts, and whether or not we actually have access to things in a physical, tangible way. So let's break this down. We're going to start with today, Sunday the 14th. So those of you guys who are watching on Sunday, all of my Sunday crew, what's up, guys? Happy Sunday. I hope your weekend has been going well. Now we're going to wake up this morning with the moon in Cancer. Okay, so the moon's at home in this sign. It's very sensitive, soft, reflecting, and it tends to kind of focus on what's going on in our inner worlds. So whether this is our own emotions, our family, our home base, that's kind of the theme when the moon is in Cancer. And something that we're going to be seeing that's going to be taking place is that this lunar transit is quite active actually for like the next day or two. Now, if you guys think back to the 8th of April, we had a solar eclipse in Aries at night at 19 degrees. So as the moon's going through Cancer, both today, Sunday, and into Monday, we're going to see that moon come into a square with Venus, the North Node, Chiron, Mercury, and the solar eclipse point. So this is the first quarter square, the opening point since that new moon phase where we start kind of encountering some of the hurdles, some of the things we have to deal with as we go through this new lunar cycle. This is where we see the speed bumps basically. So positive is that the moon in Cancer is great for reflecting on our emotions, you know, really kind of being more focused with what's going on with home and family. Challenges is that when we see the moon coming into a square with Venus, we may not have the wherewithal to totally emotionally connect to other people, right? That Venus in Aries, she's fierce and she is definitely very independent. There is a sense of also there being sometimes some challenges when it comes to how we relate to other people because she's moving through a Mars-based sign. And the moon is about our emotional reflection. So we may actually be feeling like we're kind of like a hermit going back into our shell on Sunday, where we're kind of like wanting to retreat away from the world. We're kind of trying to stay away from conflict. We're not entirely sure how we're feeling in terms of relationships to other people, or there can be a sense of feeling like just emotionally we need something different maybe than what's kind of being set up for us in relationships or even socializing. So squares produce pressure. And so what you'll kind of see on Sunday and Monday is that we're kind of torn between, well, do I just hide out, you know, and kind of keep to myself? Or do I cause a bit of a ruckus, you know, or do I kind of stand up for myself? Or am I going to be more of an extrovert? Am I going to be a little bit more active? Or am I going to fall back into my comforting patterns? Am I going to opt to kind of like stay home, snuggle, bake the cookies, like not go out and be as active or, you know, as brave? So you might kind of feel like you're being pulled in between two different directions. That moon's going to continue to keep moving through Cancer all day long. And one nice thing that we are going to see, because the moon's going to be like in a little bit of a pickle here, is that there is definitely some like karmic events taking place in the early afternoon hours, really into the early evening. So as the moon continues to move through Cancer, it's going to make a really interesting aspect. It's both going to trine Saturn, where it's emotionally stabilizing, it's tapped in, it's aware. This is happening at 13 degrees, so it can be about aligning our emotions with communication, creating better emotional boundaries, and also feeling like we are getting stuff done at home. Saturn in Pisces is about like learning to kind of dissolve and clear things or cleanse things, and creating better boundaries when it comes to our emotional needs. And the moon is making that connection in a harmonious trine. So that's a positive aspect. At the same time, though, we have the moon that's going to be squaring the north and the south node. So when the moon squares its own nodes, there can sometimes be like fateful events in our lives and also out in the world, because that moon kind of reflects where we are all collectively at emotionally. Moon square the nodes, I kind of feel like it's between a rock and a hard place. You know, in situations like this, I look at what's going on with the ruler of the north node. Well, Mars is kind of trapped between Saturn and Neptune, where there's a lot of us that feel like we're just kind of flying blind, or we're kind of losing speed or momentum. We're a little tired. There can also be this sense of like losing sight of what our goals are or what our drive or our purpose is. And then we look at Venus, which rules the South Node, and Venus is hanging out, coming into conjunction with the North Node, also being squared by the Moon. So even the Moon square reflects a lot of this. Are you going to be in the Pisces kind of hiding out camp, or are you going to be in the Aries kind of like loud and out there and being proud, type of energy? So we're going to see people who are going to be kind of in two very different ends of the spectrum. Perhaps there's events that are taking place relating to the past, your emotions, or your family that's bringing something up and asking you, are you willing to actually make a change to how you respond to things emotionally? I do anticipate this will bring some world events though, so watch for that, because there can be some things that are going on with the Moon in Cancer pertaining to homeland security, what's going on with homes, property prices, things of that kind of connection. So that'll be really the big aspect that we're going to see. Just a matter of a few short hours later, the Moon will continue to keep moving through Cancer. It's then going to start coming into a trine with Mars, which feels emotionally motivated to make a change. And then we're going to see the Moon then for the rest of the evening come into a square with Chiron and Mercury. So it might kind of feel as if, okay, some things are kind of shifting, stuff's coming up. Do we talk about it? Do we not talk about it? That Moon can be incredibly sensitive. And so as it starts squaring off with Mercury and, Chiron, there can be this feeling of, there's change happening within my home or my neighborhood or, my family or with my parents, or there's something kind of shifting with the moods in the house. And it's bringing up some like really difficult communication issues, and whether or not we are addressing wounding and things that are coming up from the past. So be mindful of like the sensitivities that will be going on. That Moon trine Mars really helps us dig deep and have the ability to be saying, hey, let's just get to the bottom of this, or let's clear the air, or let's finally, have a truce. We don't have to kind of be in this position of having this tension. And with so many planets in Aries and that Mercury retrograde, people are incredibly self-focused right now. In some senses, some people, it might be, to a fault, that we're so focused on, well, what about me and how does it affect me and what I think and what I want, that we actually lose sight of the opportunity through conflict to broaden our perspective and learn to hear other people's kind of point of view, right? And learn how to kind of get a better kind of broader view of how we see things out in the world. So watch for that kind of disruptiveness when that Moon, which wants to be close, right? Cancer, and it wants to relate, is squaring off with Chiron and Mercury. There can be this feeling of like, man, just people in the house aren't getting along today, or I went to go and visit my in-laws and it was kind of rocky, or, pets or kids misbehaving, not listening, people being very emotionally charged. When in doubt, work with the trines, soaking, water, hydration, meditation, rest, recuperation. Time alone can be really helpful as that Moon trine Saturn and Mars pretty much into Sunday evening. So this is now going to take us into the 15th. So this will be Monday. And when we wake up in the morning on Monday, the Moon is still in Cancer. One of the biggest things that you're going to see with this Moon in Cancer is that it's building towards a trine with Neptune, where we can feel like somewhere later in the day, we're just letting it all go, right? We might have an emotional release. We may cry. There can be this sense of emotional kind of shifts that are happening. But this is the point where we are starting to also see that first quarter square. So because the Moon has already hit 19 degrees, it will hit much earlier in the morning on Monday. This is like the first kind of like, obstacle in the obstacle course from the solar eclipse that we saw on the 28th. So Moon very early in the morning hits 19 degrees. Unless you're in, Europe or other parts of the world, you may be feeling this during the day, but most of us here in the States and over in these parts, we're going to be experiencing this very early in the morning. So it is possible that we kind of wake up in the morning in a bit of a mood. There's a bit of a grumpiness with this square. So the Moon's going to square the solar eclipse point at 19. It's going to square Mercury and Chiron, which can be some information that's kind of breaking when we wake up on Monday morning. That can be kind of challenging to deal with. And then we're going to start seeing the Moon build into a square with the Sun. So whenever the sun and the moon square each other, everything feels like a bit discombobulated. Like it feels like, the sun, especially in Aries, like our goals, what actions we're taking, what we are getting up and getting done first thing in the morning is being thwarted, right? We're getting hit with this wave of emotions that's almost like kind of pulling us in two separate directions, where the moon says, no, don't say anything, retreat, be careful. Is it safe? Do you stay home? The sun in Aries is like kicking the door open and it's like, let me go and do what I need to do. Get out of my way. So, in the morning, as we're kind of even getting into the afternoon on Monday, things are going to feel a little bit frustrating, especially with this reactivation with Mercury. So something else that's going to be kind of taking place is Mercury now is continuing its retrograde. Throughout the Mercury retrograde phase, we actually see Mercury conjunct Chiron 3 separate times, in the pre-shadow, the retrograde, which is this one, and then the post-shadow, which is going to be down the road. And so with retrogrades, especially with Mercury, because it's like a quicker moving retrograde, we experience things that kind of unfold throughout the transit. So not only is it hitting Chiron, which is sensitive in itself, but it's reactivating once again 19 degrees of Aries. So it's bringing up the eclipse again. So we've got Mercury, which is messages, information, and things pertaining to communication. It can also be about journalists. It can be about athletes. It can be about war. It can be about military. It could be about children, because these are all archetypes that I think of, Mercury and Aries. I said a lot, I think, throughout this last month that, like the phrase that comes up for me is like, don't shoot the messenger. Because Mercury, in Aries can be extremely assertive. It can be fiercely independent, fearless in a way. But with its retrograde, it can kind of get agitated because it's frustrated that something's not working the way that they want it to work, or it's not happening quick enough. Or with this retrograde, there can be some challenging news that can kind of come up where we on a personal level are feeling like our ability to communicate, connect, or move freely is being thwarted. So as it comes back to 19 degrees and hits Chiron, there can definitely be some hurtful words that can kind of come up. There could be difficult self-talk. We can be finding that we're kind of in a rut mentally. So now we're reflecting on that. We're kind of saying, okay, where is this negative self-talk actually like hindering me from achieving my goals? Where is this frustrated kind of communication breakdown actually making me more so isolated and less likely to be able to relate, travel, or do business with other people? And then you throw into the mix the fact that it was at the eclipse degree. It's like, it's kind of a lot. So you're going to see reactivations of that eclipse, and maybe some of the things that were seeded on the 8th, right, a little more than a week ago, are just now starting to take form. Now we're like, wait, what happened a week ago? What do you mean this is going on? Like, tell me more. And at 19, it represents legal matters, legality. It can be about relationship conversations. You may have had a tiff with somebody a week ago, and then it comes back up again on Monday or Tuesday. And you're like, why are we still talking about this? Or you never apologized for this, or I never got over that. Because retrograde means to review something that we have already discussed, or something that's already kind of come up. So just some food for thought on that. I would say look at what happened on April 8th when we had that seeding at that degree. Also go back and look at what happened around March 20th, because this is the first time that Mercury hit 19 degrees in its pre-shadow. And it's basically like healing wounds revolving around communication issues. Now, in general, when we think about Mercury conjunct Chiron, it's very personal in the sign of Aries. So it can be about healing and self-discovery through communication and thought processes. Personal identity issues can come up. And likely this is a transit that's really encouraging us, especially now that it's retrograde, to really practice introspection into past experiences and how they have shaped our communication style, our mental process, possibly leading to a transformative insight and opportunities for personal growth. Personally, throughout this transit, I have found that something that's been coming up a lot for me has been like, okay, why do I have that kind of perspective or point of view? What is the root of that? Where did that come from? Or why is it my instinctual tendency to react to certain situations in a certain way? And like, is that reacting out of fear? Is this reacting out of, frustration? And where we can like almost give too much of our power away by mentally kind of, just kind of holding on to something, right? And a lot of it's also been about needing to kind of rebalance things with relationships with other people and how we communicate with other people. And a lot of it is where we feel like bad sometimes about standing up for ourselves or issuing boundaries or anything revolving around, being a little bit more assertive for the sake of our own needs, right? And when Chiron comes up, there can be this feeling of like, oh, I don't want to say that. Somebody's going to get their feelings hurt, or, they're going to take it personally, or, they're not going to like me if I say this, or they're going to think I'm being mean. It's interesting that, these transits in Aries are reverberating off of Mars, which is the dispositor. It rules Aries. And it's in conjunction to Saturn right now. So it can be saying we're still kind of grappling with like where we don't have enough boundaries, and where lack of boundaries, leads us to kind of being people pleasers and saying yes too much and like exhausting ourselves or our resources, and like the mental and spiritual toll that this can take on us by not saying the things that we need to say. So much about the Mercury retrograde in Aries is about kind of just like saying the quiet parts out loud, acknowledging the elephant in the room, even if you're afraid to do so or talk about it, or, kind of bring something up. There is a need to express something. And in some ways, it's not even frustration. It can be sadness, agony, depression. It could be grief. It can be also this feeling of just hopelessness, because that Mars Saturn can kind of feel that way when it's in Pisces, because it's the last sign. But Aries being associated with individuality and self-assertion and courage, it suggests that this theme is about self-discovery, and that likely being centered around development of a more authentic and assertive sense of self-expression. So when you throw Chiron into the mix, the wounded healer, it implies basically that the healing process may involve confronting and integrating past wounds or insecurities related to one's identity of personal expression. So it may manifest as a rediscovery of your own voice, learning to assert yourself more confidently, embracing your unique identity without fear or without shame. So this transit's meant to serve as an opportunity to transform your past wounds into strengths, using the lessons learned to become more compassionate, more understanding, and effective communicators. And so, I don't want to make it all about frustration and anger and hostility, because we've got like Mars that's in a feminine sign, and it's, conjunct basically Saturn and Neptune now. So it can be about, when people are angry or agitated or impatient or hostile, like we still treat them respectfully. We still respond with care. We look at situations with a sense of compassion, and we go, wow, you must be having a rough time. And learn not to take everything so personally, not to internalize words and let them kind of fester and manifest as wounds. So I think that it's teaching us to like be patient with other people, to be patient with ourselves, and to learn how to de-escalate conflict and get to the root of the matter and ask people like, who hurt you? Where is this coming from? Do you want to talk about it? Rather than kind of, fueling the fire and going toe to toe with people, we're actually going to see that that's going to create more discord. So really interesting stuff, seeing that kind of happen. It'll happen several times, but now we're kind of integrating that as we see that on Monday. Now, something else to kind of think about also is that, once the moon is getting ready to leave Cancer, so this will be right around the afternoon hours. So it comes out of the square, things will ease up a little bit. Moon then immediately moves into Leo, and this will be the PM hours that we're going to see on Monday. Overnight, at least here in the States, we're going to see that moon come into an opposition with Pluto. So as if the square wasn't kind of intense enough, now we're going to see the moon opposition to Pluto, which represents some kind of deep emotional purge, some kind of shift, some kind of transformation that's happening overnight. So thankfully that's happening. Well, most of us are in bed, but we wake up then in the morning on Tuesday the 16th, much lighter day. Okay, so this is a much easier day, guys. Tuesday, we're going to see the moon go through Leo, and it's moving through a solar sign. So we're looking at what's going on with the sun. So what we'll see as the moon moves through Leo, There's more focus on joy, creativity, expression, romance, taking chances, dating. It's a much easier energy to kind of vibe with, especially because we will see the moon move throughout this sign, and it's going to start coming into a trine, over the next couple days with Venus, the North Node, Mercury, and eventually Chiron and the Sun. So we're going to experience some fire trines. So Tuesday, the momentum picks up a little bit. I definitely feel like you might start feeling it in the later hours on Tuesday, because that's when the moon is going to start picking up a trine to the first planet that it's involved with, and that's going to be Venus. So great creativity day, great having fun day, great day for, self-expression and kind of spending time with loved ones or younger people. And that moon is going to start trining Venus in the PM hours, like I said, on Tuesday. So Tuesday's a much easier day. Things kind of chill a little bit. Then we wake up on Wednesday, which will be the 17th. And when we wake up, let me go back a little bit here. There we go. When we wake up, the moon is coming into a trine now with loose trine with Venus in the North Node. So maybe you'll pick it up if you're up early to Mercury. Okay, so we've got moon emotions making contact with Mercury, which is retrograding towards the North Node. So there's a lot of going back. I loved this when I was a kid. I used to love doing this hobby, or I'm returning back to kind of teaching or creating or reconnecting with our heart space. Very creative day on tap. The only thing that you're going to want to watch here with this lunar transit is that we are going to start seeing the moon kind of tangle a little bit with Jupiter and Uranus. So officially by degree, as of the 17th, they're in the same degree. They're not exact yet. We're not going to see that for another day or two. But you will start kind of feeling, as the moon collectively is in Leo, which is about gambling, chances, the stock market, right? That square that we're going to see to Jupiter and Uranus is likely going to create some rocks, rattles, and rolls, literally with the earth or with the financial system. So you can feed off of the squares to Jupiter and Uranus where there's shocks and surprises, or you can lean into all this Aries energy, which is very much like, yes, I see opportunities. I see opportunities to make changes. I see opportunities to take risks, to have fun. The other thing you're going to want to watch also is that Venus will be coming into conjunction with the North Node on Wednesday. Pretty interesting aspect. Obviously, the North Node collectively talks a lot about where we are going, what we are here to experience, everybody. So even if you don't have any placements there, it's a pretty prominent transit. Venus is also the ruler of the South Node. So we've got like the ruler of the South Node on the North Node, which is a little bit of like, in order to get to the future, we may have to tangle or tango with our past a little bit, or there may be some sense of reevaluating the past before we move forward. It's happening at 15 degrees, so it might be about someone who calls, texts you, something you write. The North Node also represents like something that is strange, futuristic, unknown, hard to kind of predict, like unreliable in some sense as well. And it can be something that we are just striving for. We want more of it. So it's interesting to see how Venus is the dispositor of this Jupiter-Uranus kind of conjunction in Taurus. So it can be really talking about where fixation, obsession about speed and growth when it comes to resources, something happening too quickly and people wanting more of something and consuming something, and then something increases. Obviously, we've heard in this last week, like gold is hitting historic highs. It may be something relating to that, especially with the sun and moon trining each other. But I think it may just be metals in general. We might hear this about other metals. I think we're going to continue to hear more news about what's going on with like the BRICS nations and any other countries that are trying to figure out some kind of digital or kind of gold-backed currency, because Jupiter-Uranus does represent, some kind of significant growth through technology and financials. So there's so many different ways to connect this. Venus connected to this with the North Node of people wanting to accumulate more of something. Also, we've got Mars, which is kind of connected to Venus, and it's saying, well, nobody's really too sure exactly where to kind of, which baskets to put their eggs in, because they're hoping and anticipating something's going to kind of hit a jackpot, but we're like, well, nobody can really see what's going to happen yet. So be careful. Be careful. Don't be really willing to risk anything that you're not willing to lose. But more on this Venus North Node aspect. I mean, I think that it signifies also like a really powerful transformative time for relationships and also personal growth. Because Venus deals with pleasure and resources and food and our personal values, our self-esteem, socializing and relationships is a big theme as well. That connection to the North Node for some people can represent like a destined time where you're meant to level up in a relationship or you're meant to meet someone. So this alignment really emphasizes the need to develop, I think, a deeper understanding of love, beauty, and harmony within relationships, as well as a strong sense of self-worth and personal values being in the sign of Aries. So Venus in Aries, especially on an individual level, this is about really like embracing our independence, being more assertive, being authentic in relationships. And it's about us taking bold action when it comes to transforming our personal lives. And it's great for new beginnings, for fresh starts. There can be a lot of people who are focusing on just getting into Aries related things. You're just learning about fitness. You're just learning about moving your body. You're just learning about investments, right? Because that's connected to that Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. And the North Node represents the soul's journey towards self-discovery. So we think that this is about being more courageous, being a leader when it comes to love, when it comes to relationships. And it's amplifying the importance of self-love and self-expression and personal growth. So likely we're going to find that for some of us, it can support and encourage our individual growth and development rather than hinder it, if that makes sense. So I do see it being a positive transit. I do think that the only challenge here that I can see is that if we're afraid to take that first step forward into a new exciting relationship or a new job or a new living situation or a new dramatic life change, if we're feeding off of this Mars, Saturn, Neptune, you're going to miss 100% of the chances that you don't take. So it's almost like the universe is saying, look, we're going to dangle this carrot. You're going to get something sweet out of it if you're willing to kind of make the move. You can't quite see it yet, but when we get into May next month, guys, much easier energy. We're going to see that a lot of the risks that we've been taking are ultimately going to pay off. I really mean that. And like 80% of like the challenging astrology in all of 2024 is in the month of April. So we're still in the eye of the storm this week. We are still kind of moving through this energy. So just stay with it, like be brave, keep moving on, keep it moving forward. So we're going to take this now throughout Wednesday. So we'll see the North Node Venus conjunction. We're also going to start to see, the moon come into a trine with Mercury in Aries midday. Then it's going to trine Chiron. And then we're going to see later in the evening, the moon is coming out of the square with Uranus, where there's been some emotional frustrations or kind of feeling a little destabilized in a way, and it's getting a reaction out of us. That moon's going to start coming into a trine with the sun. So things kind of level out a little bit round about the time we're getting to Wednesday night. Okay. So now we move forward. We're going to take this to the 18th, which is Thursday. A little bit more of a mellow day, little bit, okay? So one thing that I see that's going on this day that's worthy of mentioning is that the moon will be right in the final moments of Aries as it's trining the sun in the final moments, the moon's in the final moments of Leo, trining the sun in the final moments of Aries. When we see 29 degrees, this is an anaretic degree. So this is the now or never, something's about to shift. And when it's in fire signs, it could mean that there's something that happens very abruptly that leads to some kind of like significant physical shift. Because fire, then we see earth follow. So in the morning, when we see these 29s, even though they're trining each other, there is this feeling of like now or never, am I going to take this leap? So watch for that. That's going to be happening. And then we will also see the moon then shift into Virgo. So this will be pretty much in the morning. When the moon is in Virgo, we are focusing on health, productivity, organization. We're doing our to-do list. We're watering the plants, walking the dogs, organizing our office, getting things done. It's a very physical, kind of practical energy. And it's all 6 houses away from all of this Aries, okay? So something to think about is that it may have a real focus on how you're getting along with coworkers, how much you're getting done, how you're physically feeling, things relating to health, body, doctor's appointments, health results. These kinds of things can be coming up. And we focus on Mercury when the moon is in Virgo because that's the ruler. Well, Mercury is about to make a very interesting aspect. So if there was a day where you were going to see something kind of funky start happening in regards to your finances, where there's like a significant financial shift, or your relationships, where there's a significant relationship shift, my money is on the 18th or the 19th, okay? These are 2 days that you want to be really cautious and careful with making any dramatic health changes, making any dramatic changes to your relationships, making any kind of quick moves to invest into something. Something that's kind of like reverberating in the background with that Jupiter-Uranus conjunction is that on a lower level, this can materialize as people like buying into, like get rich quick schemes, or, oh, just sign on the dotted line and you're going to make X amount of money, or just move this money here or make this investment or whatever, because people can get really kind of like over the top, like, believing in and drinking the Kool-Aid when it comes to some really big physical or financial shifts. And so I always get a little weary whenever I see, first of all, Mercury retrograding to Venus, because it means that something's coming back up for evaluation. It's like, am I going to get involved in this business partnership? Am I going to make that investment? Do I want to switch to that bank? Can I trust being, in a relationship with that person? Do I feel safe or valued? Like, there's going to be a lot of these things coming up. And being that, when we have Mercury conjunct Venus, we have a tendency to kind of like intellectualize love, right? And the head and the heart, they want 2 different things. So you might be feeling a little torn between what you want and what you should be doing, physically or financially, emotionally. And there's something that's kind of like rubbing me the wrong way about that conjunction. Can you hear from the past? Yes, that can happen. But I would really pay attention with this, moon transit to what's going on with Mercury and Venus. Now, Venus deals with women. It deals with femininity. It also deals with beauty and style and feminine health. We see Mercury relating to news and things pertaining to communication and independent media. It could also be about data and information analytics. So I do anticipate this may be the 18th and the 19th, a day where there can be some real shocking or damning information that's being released. And so when I look at this, I look at, on one hand, the Mars-Saturn can indicate things that are being falsely represented, kept from being seen. It can be about what is being censored. It can be things that are being decided behind closed doors, and we don't really know what's going on, or we're not getting clarity about what's taking place. And I also think about how this has a pretty dramatic kind of connection to Jupiter and Uranus being like, okay, I think there's a lot of talk right now with a lot of people being like, what's going on with inflation? And like, why is it that we were being told that, we were going to start seeing interest rates coming back down? And then we find out that, there's other hikes going on, or then we actually see the data relating to inflation and we realize that things are up even more than we thought. That's the kind of stuff that I see with this. And people kind of being like, well, where do I put my money? And like, how does this impact me? And I'm really anticipating that there's going to be some throughout this retrograde period in general, which, the shadow will last into May, some pretty big exposés about things that people are going to become aware of on a personal level, start having them asking questions and thinking a little bit differently about the world. We'll see. Anyway, that's going to start on the 18th. Really, the only other aspect that I think that's really taking place is just like that moon, which was in a trine to the sun. As this moon continues to move through Virgo, it's not making a lot of aspects, right? There's actually not really any aspects. A quincunx to the moon, so that's an eliminating aspect, and that's pretty much it. So the 18th, I kind of feel like is not a very productive day. As much as I want to say we're going to get a lot done with the moon in Virgo, The moon is not receiving a lot of support from other planets. If anything, it's creating a lot of quincunx energy to Aries and to Pluto. And so, you know, when I look at this, it's eight signs away from Aquarius, so it represents some significant transformation, and it's 6 signs away from Aries, which is health. So there's something shifting about how we look at health, what health means, what health news is coming out, how we're perceiving it. Are we believing it? Are we buying into it? Is it something that's worthy of like acknowledging and being like, hey, is this something that is serious? Is it not? Obviously, I think of Venus and about consumers. And so it can be about, you know, people being told, oh, don't buy certain products or don't eat certain products, or these things might be potentially, you know, unsafe. And I do feel like we'll hear some of that. Pretty much bang on. The last video that I did, that I told you guys, I was like, I think it's going to be about news regarding women's sports. And there was some kind of, I don't remember exactly the name of it, but there has been some major story out in the media that's about like transgender women's sports, you know, something being overturned, basically allowing certain transgender people to participate in women's sports. Okay, so that's one. So that definitely happened, especially with Mercury, Venus. It's about identifying with femininity and what that means. And Aries is a competitive energy. I also talked about like the FISA thing, which apparently is still going back and forth. And as of today, supposedly they were still voting on it. Even though some people were saying that it was shot down, there's news coming out where people are saying actually it was just reevaluated and they made a bunch of tweaks and changes, and that there were a number of Republicans that voted for this particular bill. So interesting, or the renewal of that. We've been talking about Julian Assange, and the one thing that I talked about that's really been happening, like I said, go back and watch my Mercury retrograde video, all the stuff about the bird flu. First you're hearing, oh, there's concerns and X amount of dairy cows have been affected and chickens have been affected. And then we hear, well, there's somebody that has contracted it as a human. And then there's another person. I genuinely believe a lot of this is connected to that. And so personally, I'm not a scientist, like I'm an astrologer. I stay in my lane the best that I can. I try to practice critical thinking and kind of correlate with what's going on in the world with the astrology, because I put a little bit more faith in that personally. But I do think that one of the most important things that we're missing, right, is that people are not aware that next month, in the month of May, we are going to, at least the United States, potentially be signing on to the World Health Organization's treaty and the pandemic treaty that is being issued to a number of nations, which essentially is a backdoor to being able to have a lot of say in our health, in our vaccination programs, in anything pertaining to what they deem to be a pandemic. Really important stuff, guys, because if you make the connections, if you look at the dots and you look at what's going on with how things are being ramped up, which in my opinion is kind of like hilarious because it's an old play. I mean, you know, the H1N1 or whatever, the bird flu, that goes back to like at some point earlier in the 2000s that this was something that they tried to run with. I don't remember the exact year. I want to say it was like 2011. But World Health Organization, you know, was able to test approximately 6 chickens, determined that there was a worldwide epidemic with the bird flu from those 6 tests. So when we start to look at things like the World Health Treaty and really look at how this is going to heavily influence all of our federal and also local governments, there are other states getting behind this that are starting to say they're not going to comply. They're passing things on a state level saying that they will not be interfered with and their rights will not be infringed upon, at least on a state level. It's almost like a really easy way for the federal government to be like, well, this is what's been determined and this is what they're telling us the necessary kind of treatments will be that, you know, some kind of like lockdown situation, or, you know, what recommendations they're making with medication, what medication can come in or out of your country, whether or not people have to comply with certain like medical tyranny, and that kind of stuff. And so it's like, look, you know, I keep telling everybody the earthquakes have happened. Yes, there may be more. The solar eclipse happened. Let's move on in the next cycle of the news. This is the most important thing that people need to be thinking about right now. You need to be educating yourself about this and becoming aware about it, because a lot of people live in la la land and they're like, oh, it's not going to affect me. It's not a big deal. until it does, because they're claiming that they will have the ability in a global manner to just say, okay, this is what steps we need to take across the board, regardless of what country you're in. Very important if this is potentially going to be agreed upon in May, while we're seeing news cycles that's pumping all of this stuff, that's creating all of this fear about the bird flu, right? There is, for me, Mercury can be small animals and things that fly. Mercury retrograde is trying to get the information, and it's in Aries, so how it impacts us individually. It's conjunct Venus, which is things that are connected to the South Node that we need to kind of let go of. And Mars is the dispositor of all of this. So it's something that's kind of like fishy behind the scenes, that's trying to create more discord, create more conflict, make people anxious, make people aware that, or think that it's the end of the world. When in reality, if you want to use this in a positive way, it's like learn about supporting your health. Learn about ways that you can manage stress and anxiety. For a lot of people, I think the Mars-Saturn connection to Aries is like, turn off your screens, stop watching the news, like stop listening to things that are promoting fear. Focus on the vibe that you're trying to create. Meditate, spend time outside, connect with nature, eat well, know where your food comes from. Like, very simple things, right? But when we get so overly consumed and swamped, because Pisces energy is swampy, and swallowed up by, oh my God, it's the end of the world, what are we gonna do? It disempowers us, and it makes us feel like we have no other options. When in reality, everything is feeding off of our energy. So where intention goes, energy flows. Stop consuming things that are promoting fear. Instead, focus on your reality, creating your reality, and get right with your body, and start focusing on your goals and put on blinders. This is a time where you have to put your blinders on in order to keep moving forward. Okay, so let's take this now to Friday, that's the 19th. So we're gonna keep taking this moon through Virgo. So it's not gonna like try and make any aspects. So honestly, Thursday, like if you're not having aspects from the moon that's supportive, not much is gonna get done. Let me just put it that way. So Thursday is just kind of like a let it ride type of vibe until we get into Friday. And when we get into Friday, we are going to be seeing the moon in Virgo is going to start opposing right here, Saturn, okay? Moon is emotions, moon in Virgo is intellectual, it's rational, it takes its time, it does not mince words, it's wanting to kind of get down to business and focus on health, clarity, and organization. So we start seeing the moon, which is us collectively opposing Saturn. So there are some people being like, something's not adding up, like the facts and the figures, what's the deal, you know, or feeling emotionally limited or restricted, or, you know, not really in alignment with what is being pushed forward, or telling us what our boundaries are, or what we should not be asking about. The positive in the midst of this is that as this moon continues to move through Virgo, it's going to start coming into a trine with Jupiter and Uranus. So it means like really great day to be maybe, you know, working on a garden, you know, going in and selecting some seeds, doing some floral arrangements, doing some healing work, doing some cleaning, some organization, and like really kind of shifting up the energy. You guys have heard me talk on my channel before. Earlier this year, I moved, and when I moved, I got my house feng shuied, which is it's the first time I've ever done that. And I was like really interested in creating a flow in the space that was going to work and create more harmony and just better health, right? And so I've been learning about that ever since. And I kind of feel like whenever I see moon in Virgo making trines to Jupiter and Uranus, like that's a time where I naturally will kind of go around the house and reorganize things and clean things up and kind of move things around a little bit and like really shift the flow of the energy. So if you're feeling stagnant or you're feeling stuck, I really recommend actually doing this during this transit, because it's going to be a tight opposition to Mars, which can feel frustrating and limiting. But the trine to Jupiter and Uranus, it just says like expand it, let it free, open the windows, bring the plants inside, find ways to make changes to your routine, your habits. And it's great for integrating and bringing in some kind of new herbal remedies as well. Okay, so it hasn't opposed Saturn yet, but it is reverberating off of Mercury still. And this is the day, okay, the 19th, which is Friday, where Mercury, which is retrograde, it's going back and relaying some information or getting all of the pieces or the facts or the receipts in some of your guys' cases, and it's coming into conjunction with Venus. For me, Mercury retrograde conjunct Venus just collectively is like people being like, wait, where did my money go? Or where are my taxes going? Or, where did I put my checkbook? Or where did my debit card go? These are kind of themes that happen with Mercury retrograde conjunct Venus. It can be a day where you do have a dream about an ex-partner, or you do hear from, somebody that you dated back in the day, or, that old scrappy ex-boyfriend sends you a friend request online. Mercury can be systems. So this would be the day basically that I would watch for it. And what's kind of funny to me is that the moon is quincunx this. So while Aries is like, yeah, let's do it, let's get going, it's kind of like irrational and impulsive, Virgo moons are like, no. I say this lovingly, like it is the judginess, it is the discernment, it is the rational kind of like common sense, like, angel on your shoulder that you may need in the midst of this particular transit. Now it's happening also at 17 degrees. So it is about romance. It is about creativity. It is about lovers. It is about children. It is about trading in the stock market. So I do feel like that moon, both in opposition to Saturn and the quincunx to Venus and Mercury retrograde, is like, sometimes if the past comes calling or knocking, like you don't have to open that door. You don't have to respond. There is a sense of practicing, patience and creating some healthy boundaries with that moon in opposition. It's like, nope, I'm not going to open that door. So watch for that. That's going to happen. That's going to be on Friday. And the moon is going to continue to keep moving through Virgo. So it looks like at the same time, the sun is squaring Pluto or starting to square Pluto. So I'll get into that in a second. So that moon's going to keep moving. They will conjunct early in the morning, Mercury and Venus. And I'm really looking at like when the moon hits Virgo around that 17, 18 degrees, that's when it's creating the quincunx. And it's like, I don't know if I should respond to this, in the early evening. Okay, what else is happening today? Sun enters into Taurus on the 19th. So those of you guys who are, Tauruses that are born in April, happy birthday. Those of you guys who are Aries that are born this week, also happy birthday to you guys. Sun enters into Taurus. We focus on stability, security, goals, resources, values, self-esteem, pleasure, things that help us feel more so grounded and connected. So Taurus season begins officially, having us now really focus on what's going on with Venus. Before, as we were in Aries season, we were looking at Mars, and we kind of got like the shit end of the stick because Mars has been either conjunct Saturn or in Pisces. So now that we are looking at Venus's transit during Taurus season, it's beginning with Venus approaching Chiron. Okay, so we're hitting a little bit of a snag here. Let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, obviously everybody's talking about the 19th and I guess technically the 20th, if that's the Jupiter-Uranus aspect forms. But I do feel like just having the sun and then Jupiter and Uranus in this sign, there is going to be this feeling on the 19th and the 20th that's like, oh, something big is coming. There is some big shift, or there is some big wave that is going to be coming that's going to impact everybody physically. Like we'll feel it, because Taurus is really about embodiment, where all the stuff has been kind of initiating in Aries. Now we're like, okay, now we're kind of locking in. Anyway, Venus. Venus is hanging out obviously in Aries. It'll go into Taurus in a little bit of time. But it's interesting that Taurus season begins on Friday with Venus coming back to the eclipse degree and conjuncting Chiron. Okay, so a little bit more on the Venus-Mercury stuff. So what can it mean for you with Venus conjunct Mercury retrograde? Reevaluating your self-worth and your personal values. I think it might be about, in relation to how you express yourselves and you communicate to other people. It can bring about introspection, which can lead to a deeper understanding of personal desires, which is also supported by Mars and Saturn. Healing ego wounds, right? That's something else that can kind of come up because Mercury retrograde with Chiron and Aries, it does emphasize something going on with healing past wounds relating to ego and identity. And this period can provide opportunities for self-reflection and growth, allowing you to overcome insecurities and develop a more authentic self. Watch for redefining relationships. I feel like Mercury retrograde with Venus is like rethinking and reassessing how we relate to people, and where the way we've been doing it has not been working and it's been creating some upset. So it is possible that, we may be reassessing our needs in relationships and making the necessary changes to align their connections more so better, our connections more so better, with our self-worth, okay? And so the Sun in Taurus is really saying we need to focus on our self-worth, how we feel in our bodies, how do we feel about ourselves, do we feel solid in what we have, what do we need more of, because it's that grounding kind of Venusian energy. This is also about balancing assertiveness with empathy, okay? So we're kind of going back and forth because we've got all that Aries and we've got all that Pisces. So as Mercury retrogrades in conjunction with Venus and also Chiron, there is this sense of like needing to balance our assertiveness with empathy and understanding. So it can help us develop more of like a nuanced approach to expressing our needs and desires while considering feelings and perspective of other people. For a lot of us, it could be like, okay, now how does that make you feel, right? And we may feel agitated and impatient, and it's difficult to sometimes remember to remove ourselves from the situation and try to consider other people's perspective. But it can be helpful because I think it can really help us kind of better balance our relationships to other people as well. And obviously reviewed focus on personal growth. So because Mercury in Aries is so self-focused, it's the I think, I am. That retrograde with Venus and also Chiron is saying it's encouraging us to focus on our individual growth and self-improvement, finding ways to better ourselves every day. Don't get flustered and focused on what other people are doing wrong. Don't be pointing fingers and being like, well, they did this, why can't I do that? Like, don't get caught up in that. Focus on yourself. Bring the energy back to yourself. That's what you really want to focus on with this transit, because I think that if you take a little bit of time for reflection and you're learning from past experiences, you'll be able with these aspects to make better changes to align with your true authentic self. You're not going to be so focused on, they did me wrong and they hurt me and I'm out for revenge. It's kind of like learning to let it go and being like, I'm going to focus more on my response. I'm going to focus more on being an actor, not a reactor. And really playing the role of being your own healer. So many things are going on with the 19th. We've got also Mars in Pisces now sextiling Jupiter and Uranus, which means that there is some sense of subtle behind the scenes motive, action, a subconscious stirring of sorts that's happening collectively, things that are going on with water and with the ocean. I saw this whole thing that was like all over Twitter the last couple of days where people are like, oh my God, there's this wave that appeared outside of Antarctica. And, they were tracking how it was going to come up the side of Africa. And they're saying it's, supposed to land somewhere on the Atlantic kind of seaboard. And then it disappeared. So people were watching it pretty intensely for about a whole evening. And then suddenly, some people were saying, oh, it was a glitch in the software. And then other people were like, no, it appeared out of nowhere and now it's gone. I can't confirm that any of this information is true, but it got me thinking about how, Mars was going to start coming into the sextile with Jupiter and Uranus, and where there could be volcanic, happenings in the ocean. There can be things going on with the plates also, and, earthquakes and things happening that can be out in the ocean that can have a ripple effect, literally a sextile, and have massive impact and effects on physical land. So these earthquakes that we are seeing, that's been kind of all over the place since March, this continuation of this pressure that is behind the scenes with Mars and Neptune. This could be heat. This could also be some storms that are kind of building, some tropical storms with Mars and Neptune, creating a lot of pressure connected to heat and water, and how that impacts what's going on land. So I do think that we may see some more extreme kind of weather, just with Jupiter, Uranus in general. Sidebar, something I was listening to this week. I was listening to Steve Judd. If you guys haven't listened to Steve Judd, he's a phenomenal astrologer. I think he's from the UK. But his take on the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, he was saying that he and another astrologer sat down and they went and did research through all of these like really well-known earthquake periods. And he was studying the charts and being like, okay, is there a Jupiter-Uranus aspect here? And he said they could only account for maybe 25% of the cases to be connected to Jupiter-Uranus. So they couldn't flat out rule, okay, there's a Jupiter-Uranus conjunction coming, there's a big earthquake. But they had like an epiphany aha moment, and they decided to go and look at the charts from a heliocentric point of view. So they're actually looking at the charts from the perspective of the sun. And when they looked at it like that, they saw astonishing patterns that when they look at it from that aspect, where you're putting the sun at the center of everything, that you're able to that from the perspective of Earth, you're able to look at everything and go, oh my God, like there is this significant shift where there is a repetitive pattern in these charts that do correlate with earthquakes. And so he was basically saying like, yeah, I do think that there could be some rather intense energy for the better part of, I believe he said the next couple of weeks, that there could be something happening. Obviously, touch wood, right? We always have earthquakes or other things kind of going on around the world, but newsworthy or historical kind of quakes, this is generally what they see with those charts. So I find it interesting because I haven't looked at that chart, but I'm personally looking at this sextile that's happening to Jupiter and Uranus, and I feel like that's triggering it. I'm also looking at this incoming, Sun square Pluto, which is also talking about where this massive kind of collective energy, this purge that's taking place, this kind of revolutionary, tearing it down. We have to kind of restore some kind of structure, within society, and we need to kind of come together collectively as one. That's also a very volcanic aspect. Sun square Pluto, it's like purging and like releasing this pressure and removing anything that's been kind of like, underground that needs to kind of be exposed. So there's a couple different things here that does make me feel like something's happening. All right, so 19th, Friday, even into the evening, that moon is starting to come into an opposition with Mars and Saturn. It does feel like it pays to be in your lane, to be doing something productive, to be opting to lean more into this Virgo moon trine Jupiter and Uranus. I am changing how I'm eating. I'm changing my schedule. I'm focusing on productivity. Maybe you're getting things organized and you're, getting some things done on Friday night rather than going out and partying, because that moon is refraining from Saturn, Mars, and Neptune that says, just, have a couple of drinks or, stay up all night, party, let all the self-undoing kind of patterns come up, like, we'll wake you up when it's over. This is saying, no, actually, I really want to be super hyper focused on like what's in front of me, and really focusing on the tasks at hand. So a lot of this can be, I think, focusing on health, especially with like the quincunx the moon is making to all these placements in Aries. It's saying like there is a need to be super hyper focused right now and like alert to something that's going on. All right, so this is going to take us to the 20th. So this is the big day that everybody has been waiting for. And no, I'm not talking about 420. This is the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction that's going to be taking place. And so something I want you guys to think about is that, the moon is often seen as a trigger for events. Okay, that's what we see. So the moon here is early in the morning coming into a trine with Jupiter and Uranus. And I believe the conjunction is only going to be for like a matter of like an hour or two, not very long. But this will be a trigger. Okay, so that moon is trining Jupiter and Uranus, which kind of grows and creates some kind of wave of resistance, some feeling of rebelliousness, of wanting to kind of challenge the status quo, wanting to see radical or dramatic shifts revolving around Taurus-related things. So that trine can be something, especially that moon in opposition to Mars at a 22, which can talk about with great challenges, with delays, with trouble. And then the moon trines Jupiter and Uranus. And so I just, for the life of me, it's like I can't help but laugh that this is supposed to be correlating. It'll either be the 19th or the 20th, I think, with the Bitcoin halving. So it's like, after there's been so much like resistance and trying to like convince people like, no, it's not a good idea, don't invest in it, and I'm not giving you guys financial advice, but there has definitely been some pretty significant pushback from financial institutions to like adopt this. That the moon hits 22 degrees and it trines it. So it's funny to me because it's kind of this feeling that's like, oh, or we might actually start to kind of see the true effects of what the value of this could be. The other thing to kind of think about is that in the background, you know, this is something that's going to play out over time. Like I think about the last Jupiter-Uranus conjunction that happened in Pisces, I believe. It did not happen in Aries. So it happened in Pisces, and I think about what was happening during that time, and you know, it was taking place at a time for me where, you know, in my 6th house, I was like having radical changes going on with like my work, and there was like so many unpredictable things that were happening, and I was like, what the heck is going on? Little did I know that was happening in preparation down the road for me to be able to have a lot more freedom when it came to my work. Was it in Pisces? I want to say it was in Pisces. Maybe it was in Aries. No, maybe it was in Aries, but it was still, it was impacting my relationship with people who I was working with, because Jupiter is my 6th house lord. But that ultimately didn't play out for a matter of months. It was like 6 months to 12 months later that ultimately led to some kind of freedom when it came to the relationships and then the work that I was going to start doing. So I wouldn't personally expect like some big life-changing shift to happen on this day. For some of you guys, if you happen to have, you know, Jupiter as your chart ruler, so if you're a Sagittarius or a Pisces rising, maybe. If you're an Aquarius rising ruled by Uranus, maybe. If you're a Taurus, you know, rising, maybe. If you have anything 20, 21, 22 degrees of Taurus, sure. But I would give this some time, because we are still going to see the sun hit this degree, Venus hit this degree, Mercury hit this degree, Mars is going to hit this. And I would say over the next several months, really between now and when we have the full moon that's going to be in Aquarius in August, you will really start to see the effects of this particular conjunction unfold. So give it a little bit of time. Taurus takes its time. It's slow because it needs to kind of integrate and build up a little bit momentum. But I think you guys will start to see the sparkles of this next month as we start to see planets coming into conjunction with Jupiter and Uranus, and you'll start to see that. So we've got Moon in opposition to Neptune, where you know, at the end of the day, where we're feeling a little like unsure about connecting. It starts with an opposition to Saturn and Mars, where we're kind of refraining from something or taking a step back. Maybe we feel like we have to work extra hard to stay focused. And then we see Jupiter in conjunction to Uranus. There's a lot happening. The other thing that's going to be happening this day is we are going to see Venus that's going to return, and she's coming to 19 degrees. So there's that darn 19 degrees again from the eclipse. So the 20th is a pretty significant day. Now, Venus coming into conjunction with Chiron, healing those wounds relating to relationships, where we feel like an oddball, where maybe we feel rejected, we feel a little bit like an outsider. That seems to be rather significant with that conjunction. I think about the Sabian symbol for 20 degrees of Aries. Okay, so this is rounding up. And the Sabian symbol for 20 degrees of Aries is a young girl feeding birds in winter. The symbol represents a person who is able to maintain a life-giving relationship with natural forces even during difficult or challenging time, symbolized by winter. It emphasizes the importance of caring for and nurturing other people even when resources may be scarce. This symbol also suggests the ability to see beyond immediate personal needs and offer help to those in need, which can bring a sense of fulfillment of happiness. I talked to you guys in my last video, I was talking about like the cardinals, and it was so cool to hear so many people kind of like talk about it. Even later in the day after that video, like finally like a male cardinal showed up, like a full bright red one, and I was like, okay, I got the message. But I really resonate with those messages, and I feel like so much of that connection with the cardinal was really about being like, look, you have to be brave. And sometimes, you know, when you're dealing with difficult circumstances, whether it's about you know, standing up for yourself, or if this is about having enough, you know, bravery or, you know, kind of personal belief that you can, you know, start over, or you can initiate something, or that you are, you know, going to see something come to fruition. I feel like this is so much about like the planets that are going through Aries and that need to really kind of believe in yourself. And so I have seen, especially in my own life, I've seen some Venus Chiron transits and with my clients where there has actually been less wounding when Venus comes into conjunction with Chiron in conjunction. This is like healing. Like think of Venus as coming in and being like, you receive the sweetness or the goodness from that healing. You meet that new person. Somebody comes in that ends up kind of healing you, or you end up kind of initiating or giving somebody some kind of gift when it comes to healing. So I think that that's especially potent with Venus being at that solar eclipse degree. And I think that with this conjunction, Venus is offering you the opportunity for healing and growth in areas of love and relationship and self-worth. So where Mercury's been retrograde over that, you've been back and forth, like, can I do this? Am I good enough? Am I gonna make it? And then Venus comes in and she's like, kissing all the wounds and putting on the band-aids and passing out flowers and being like, yes, we can fix this. You are capable. We can smooth over things. You can have healthier self-esteem. Granted, she's an Aries, so it's less fuzzy. It's more kind of like tough love, dust yourself off, pick yourself up and keep it going, and like really needing to stay self-motivated in order to really see some of the changes that need to happen. So I think this is going to represent a powerful opportunity for healing. And I think that it's also talking about a deep sensitivity and vulnerability to matters of the heart, as well as potential profound transformation. So it will be highlighting basically for all of us the need to confront past wounds and insecurities in relationships so we can foster growth and evolution of partnership in a very transformative way. I also think that we're going to be looking at where some of us may be having a tendency to be too independent, hyper assertive, and whether that's holding us back from love. Like I saw like a meme the other day on Twitter, and it was like a woman who was like making a pie, and she was standing next to like a man, and she was saying, I don't need your help, I can do it. And he said, yeah, I know you can, let me anyway. And I was like, oh, all my cardinal energies resonate with that, where sometimes for a lot of us, I think like hyper independence can be a reaction to trauma. And that we have learned to basically be like, get back, let me do it, I can do it, don't help me, just leave me alone, let me handle it, because we are so almost like it's so ingrained in us in an instinctual level, like in a survival way, to just be like, I can handle everything by myself, I don't need help. And so part of, I think, this transit is like that opening up and learning to kind of soften our defenses a little bit, let our guard down, and like let other people love us, let other people help us, let other people nurture us and talk to us and ask us what we need. Likely if you're in a situation where you're experiencing a lot of anger or frustration or intensity or conflict, if you speak to that long enough, you'll realize, if you pull back the layers during this transit, that it's actually fear or grief or pain. It's not necessarily anger. I think anger and frustration and conflict and ultimately hate all really are derivatives of fear or pain. So if you're facing some issues this week where somebody's saying, get back, don't help me, leave me alone, I can do it, I would be like, who hurt you? Are you willing to kind of let me in, because I want to help you? And obviously we have to help those who want to help themselves. I get that. But we're going to get a lot further this week by learning to be disarming and really helping one another and learning to be compassionate rather than kind of putting our guards up. It's teaching us some really important lessons in relationship. And I think, this is also about further emphasizing the importance of self-discovery and learning how to be leaders in our relationships with other people, but also with ourselves. So we've got this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. So like I said, you're already feeling it by the time you guys are watching this. It will be exact on the 20th. As we're getting into the end of April, beginning of May, it's going to start to fade. But this conjunction is happening at 21 degrees. So this is about growth, right? 21 degrees is a Sag degree. So it's things that are international. So I can't help but notice that, Taurus is money, Jupiter is global, Uranus is digital. And so we're going to start to see, I think, more global digital adoption of currency. I think we're going to start hearing more about other international markets that are really focusing on either some specific type of decentralized currency, or they're going to be focusing on like metals and assets and things revolving around food or land. This is going to be the big talk. And so this is going to become more of an emphasis as we see this conjunction happen. Now in the background, remember that Pluto is the dispositor for Uranus because it's, you know, kind of like connected to that. And so there is some sense of being like, well, there is some major evolution that's going on collectively with politics, with money, also with freedom, with the internet, with technology. And then we've also got Jupiter, which is very much connected to all of these energies here in Pisces. And so Jupiter is saying that this surge, price surges, we're going to see, I think, higher inflation, as crazy as that sounds. I think we're going to see some price of goods become even more unreasonable, particularly with like energy and natural resources, like maybe even like gas. But this is connected to all these placements in Pisces. So with Saturn, which limits, Mars, which is about movement and things that flow, and Neptune can be things that are hidden. It's like there can be things going on where there is something or someone or institutions that are kind of pulling the strings that are saying like, well, now we decide that we want people to be freaked out about eating eggs. So, you know, eggs will go up 200%. Or now we're, you know, making people see all of these videos and things that's happening, you know, with these conflicts with foreign wars. So now we've got a lot of people who are really worried about that. And like, you know, now we're going to jack up the price of like oil and gasoline. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that's going to happen. So one of the best things I can tell you guys this week is ground your energy. You can do it simply for free. Take your shoes off, go walk in the grass. Other options can be gardening, working with food, using aromatherapy, using herbs, meditating with crystals, putting your feet on a grounding mat. Look into grounding mats. They're awesome. I use them every day. I love them. I always have one under my desk now. I definitely notice a difference. It's almost completely helped, I think, partially relieve migraines. It's also really helped me in a sense of just feeling more calm. I'm not sponsored by anybody. I'm just telling you guys it works. If you're into gridding, you can grid your workspace, your office space, your home. You can also consider, you know, working with aromatherapy. You know, one of the medicines that comes from Taurus is aromatherapy, and anything that deals with herbs and things that smell good and things that feel good. So I would consider looking into something like that as well. But just connecting to the earth element, because there's definitely the positive in all this is that the frequencies are going to rise. We're going to see frequencies go up. Another thing you can do is, if you're already watching me on YouTube, make a conscious effort whenever you're just kind of hanging out at home, or you're, you know, in your workspace, you're doing something where there's like no sound going on. Go and look up some binaural beats. Go and look at certain frequency lists and things that you can be playing, you know, like the Schumann resonance, and other things that are high vibrational sequences that you can be playing in your space this week can be really helpful, because this is about the collective, I think, consciousness rising and the effect that it's going to have on Earth and the effect that it's going to have on all of us, especially when it comes to our physical kind of experiences. So anything that we can do to raise those vibrations can be really helpful. And I love the Sabian symbol connected with this particular conjunction. So we read 22 degrees because it's 21 and change. And we know that 21, like I said, it deals with growth, things that kind of go up. So the Sabian symbol for this is a white dove flying over troubled water. Yes, cue the song. The symbol represents the ability to rise above and transcend challenging situations, finding peace and harmony amidst turmoil. It suggests the need for inner peace, calm, and when external circumstances are difficult or chaotic. The dove symbolizes purity, innocence, hope, and indicating that through maintaining a positive outlook and a higher perspective, one can navigate through life's challenges with grace and resilience. So what does the Jupiter-Uranus, you know, kind of conjunction mean in a nutshell? Well, I've done a lot of videos on it, so go and check out my other videos, but I will give you guys a few tips. One is we're going to hear a lot more about sustainability and resource management, okay? Because Uranus has this kind of environmental flair. It is about the collective. You know, Taurus is also about the earth. It's a fixed earth sign ruled by Venus, so it can be connections to Earth's resources. And then Jupiter can represent some kind of global initiative or global laws, or, you know, some kind of governing over certain things. So, you know, Uranus has been in Taurus since 2018. So with this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction that's happening now, does indicate that there could be like significant breakthroughs in the realm of sustainability and resource management. It can manifest a variety of ways, including a transition to renewable energy and a more conscious approach to Earth's resources. So I'm hoping that there's some new type of energy that comes through that we can use. You know, I think that with Mars being in a sextile here, I think it's stuff that's kind of being limited or held back. And whether you're one of those people who believes in like all of, you know, Tesla's innovations and all of his things that he had about, you know, opportunities for basically freeing humanity and giving us all types of information about healing and frequencies and also energy or not, there's some connection here. In his chart's like lit up like a Christmas tree right now, by the way. But this is Saturn Mars, which can be withholding or limiting, you know, some kind of forward motion with something, but it can also represent getting ready to break through from that. I'm wondering if this is going to be, you know, energy that's being created from water or from something kind of connected to like other frequencies that can be impacting the Earth and other ways that we can be generating things that can be like freeing humanity, right? Jupiter and Uranus. I also think that this is going to be about, you know, personal breakthroughs and innovations. That's the big theme. Because this conjunction is really future focused, right? Uranus is about the future and Jupiter is optimistic. So it's really about encouraging us on an individual level to break free from routine and embrace new possibilities. Now, it could lead to personal breakthroughs and innovations, especially in areas related to one's work or personal projects. We're going to see an immense amount of people become very wealthy because of the decisions that they make, I think, over the following, you know, several weeks and months from this conjunction. I will double down on that several times over. But I think it's more than just wealth. It's about a wealth of knowledge, right? Jupiter's very knowledgeable. It's about a wealth when it comes to culture. And we're certainly seeing this. We've got now some countries that are offering, just recently in El Salvador, saying that they're going to create all of these like, you know, programs to be able to bring people in and give them visas if they are scientists or if they are philosophers, if they're artists, because they see the value in bringing those people into their culture and bringing some of the brightest and most future kind of thinking minds to that country to help grow and develop, you know, their culture. Amazing, right? And these are Uranians, so these are people who are kind of out there. Jupiter, they're foreigners, right? But they're bringing them in to help build a new society. That is the positive kind of reflection of this Jupiter-Uranus aspect. The others can be this mad scientist kind of perspective, or, you know, things kind of going haywire or short-circuiting or burning out. Certainly the way that I kind of look at this, because after all, I think of Jupiter as like the comedian, you know, that connection to Sagittarius and being somebody who's always got that shit-eating grin on their face. And they are very much about optimism and positivity and the higher purpose. Like we have to maintain our sense of, you know, humor throughout this difficult time. Like I think it's so important for us to be really leaning on humor. I think that we're going to probably see some pretty significant things that are happening in the comedy world. I also feel like there can be some groundbreaking shifts that can be happening with art and with music and other things. So we have to look at the positive side of things, because really we're kind of at a point where things can't really stay the same. Like status quo isn't working anymore. We're breaking out of that. And I think with Venus being the dispositor of Taurus, it's really saying like we're actually realizing like what we've been doing hasn't been working and it's time for something new. So we have to kind of learn to kind of like laugh sometimes at the irony of the situations that we find ourselves in, and really lean on optimism rather than falling into like this Mars, Saturn, Neptune trap of, oh, it's the end of the world, you know, there's no point, what are we gonna do? I look at this as like, if shit's gonna go up in flames, like you might as well live your life. Like, you know, go and do some of the things that you feel like you've always wanted to do. Like take a chance, take a risk. If that's the mindset that you have, if it's the end of the world. I don't subscribe to that personally, but I feel like this is a time where those who are willing to take risks may potentially have very big rewards in the near future. Embrace change. A lot of this is about being more flexible and adaptable and, you know, kind of seizing opportunities for growth and expansion. This does mean that, you know, sometimes we have to reinvent ourselves, or we have to reinvent relationships, because Venus is connected to Taurus, so it can be our relationship to food, our relationship to money, to the material world, our values shift in some way. So there will be a period of reevaluating these things, and this will lead to changes in how us as individuals relate to what we consider to be important in life. I've been feeling this big time, but then again, you know, I've had Uranus in opposition to like 4 planets in Scorpio for the last couple of years. And so for me, it's been a lot of like looking at things being like, oh, I want out of the rat race, you know, like I don't want things, I want experiences. And that's really changed my perspective a lot in, you know, what I'm putting value into. It's like, you know, looking back, I mean, especially the last couple of years, you know, I bought a car in 2016 and I've had the same car since then, like paid it off 2 or 3 years ago. Could easily sell the car, flip it into a new one and take a car payment. But for me, I like the freedom of being like, so what, I don't have a new car, I don't care. You know, like I don't have anybody to impress. Nobody's gonna care what kind of car I'm driving. I certainly don't. And then I think about the money that I save not having that, and that it gives me the freedom to decide if I want to take time off of work or if I want to travel. It gives me the freedom to decide, do I want to invest that money or would I rather just continue to like save? So I've been looking at things differently, you know, granted, I mean, I'm a girl, so I'm gonna like some of my things, but I've really been focused on making sweeping changes to the way that I look at what I value, and it really kind of trickles down to valuing experiences over things. You know, I'd much rather go on a trip than have a new handbag, right? I would much rather make a sacrifice and make a small investment into something rather than going out and spending a couple $100s at the bar. And that's just me. Maybe that's like, you know, getting older, but my perspectives have changed. And I think that that has really opened things up and made me kind of like really value things a lot more and like look at how much time I'm spending doing things differently. So I don't know if you kind of resonate with that. I know everybody's in different places all over the spectrum with what's going on with things financially, but for a lot of people, it's also just taking a step back and being like, is working a 9-to-5 job actually really safe when you think about it, right? And some people, they can't get out of that box and like, that's okay. But when you really think about it, working a 9-to-5 job and being somewhere where you may feel like a number and you may be there for a decade or more, and then, you know, you're kind of trading that time consistently for potentially time that you could have spent on your free time to learn more about financial freedom, to learn more about a side hustle that could turn into a business, to take courses or classes that could materialize as you becoming more kind of like independent in a second field, things like that, you know? And so I think that a lot of people are realizing that they've gotten kind of stuck or kind of fixed into this mindset that I have to collect a paycheck, I have to get up and go to work at a certain time and work these hours and sacrifice time with my friends or my family or give up the things that are most important because I have to have a new car, or I have to make sure I have like a, you know, 7-year degree, or I have to, you know, have pictures of me in a bathing suit in Bali on Instagram. And I really feel like this is the time where this collective shift is going to happen, and people are going to start realizing that we have to reevaluate the way that we look at our value system. And that freedom is really going to be financial freedom. Freedom is really going to be having knowledge and connections. And I think it's going to be about alternative economies and other ways that we can trade and exchange, and other ways that we can also learn. I think a currency in the future is going to be information and knowledge. So if you're somebody who's very knowledgeable in your field, there's going to be people who would be willing to pay for that. So that opens a door for a lot of Taurus-related professions, farmers, investors, people into digital currency, people who know a lot about beauty and fashion and style and jewelry and rocks and butchers and people who can work with leather and like all kinds of these archetypes that are connected to Taurus. This particular archetype is evolving, it's changing. So for some people, it can almost feel like the gold rush, where you're like rushing into a situation and you're kind of the first person in on it. And because you're able to get that information and have that experience or make that investment, oh boy, that could potentially be incredibly lucrative for the right people. Anyway, reconnect with the physical world. That's the other best advice I can give you, because Taurus is deeply connected to the earth. And so this is about resources. This is about encouraging us on an individual level to connect with the physical world and develop a much more respectful relationship with our environment. And so I think for some people, the positive is going to be that they are more willing to say, you know what, I'm not going to sit inside under fluorescent lighting and eat lunch. I'm going to go sit outside at a table in the sun. Or I am going to go for a walk out in the park, a few times a week. Or I am going to take up gardening. And it doesn't have to be anything crazy. It doesn't have to be, a situation where, you just go and start like a community out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, you could. I think some people are. Definitely we're seeing masses of people seeing the potential of having, agricultural kind of like almost like compounds where people are buying land together and developing it together. Yes, we will see people do that. But this is about us recognizing that we can learn a lot from nature if we take the time to really be in nature, to listen to nature, to really connect with that kind of energy vibrationally. The downside is that, once again, like I said, the dispositor of this is Venus, and Venus is conjunct Mercury, where I think individuals are either waking up realizing that we have the tools to get back to nature, we have the ability to heal ourselves. If we're willing to kind of connect to ourselves and also learn more about the earth and herbs and natural treatments, we can find the solutions. But I think about how there's also connections here with the Saturn, Mars, Neptune sextile, and it means that we are probably in the months ahead going to hear some really crazy new limitations about, okay, if you want to buy this, it's going to be 4 times the price. Or if you want to fly, there's going to be, some kind of carbon tax. If you want to buy land, we will only allow certain people to buy land, or certain land cannot be purchased. If you want to have access to certain water or water rights, it's going to cost you more, or it's no longer available. We're gonna hear a lot of, well, we're protecting this in the name of the environment. We're doing this in the name of, equality. And I'm all for saving the planet. I'm all for doing that stuff. Don't get me wrong. But there is a weird agenda here with Mars and Saturn and Neptune behind the scenes, which is essentially actually wanting to manipulate and distort and make people feel disconnected. A lot of this, I think, is about people waking up and kind of like seeing through the matrix, and if you guys have seen that series, that trilogy, that the whole theme of that movie is about waking up and realizing that in a way you're just like a slave to the system. And once you see it, once you wake up to it and you've been, you've taken the pill from Morpheus, there's no going back. And so I think this is that moment for a lot of people where they're kind of realizing, okay, people are waking up. Like, what are we going to do? Like the normies are starting to kind of figure out what's going on. So there's some panic that's happening. And so, when you hear things like, oh, Bill Gates wants to block out the sun, and you're like, oh, that's crazy. It's conspiracy talk. And then you find out, no, actually, there are people in Northern California showing up to city council meetings talking about all of the testing that they're doing with all the stuff they're finding in their system. Because turns out they are spraying salt particles or other things into the sky as an experiment to try to block out the sun. That it's not that crazy to think, that if we have people who realize that if we connect to Earth, then we will remember who we are, that there is going to be a move to try to disconnect us from nature. But nature always finds a way, right? Always finds a way. And the human spirit is very resilient. So you have to do your part by basically going out there and connecting with the earth, and also remembering where you came from and not feeling like you have to be limited by the system, and also by your routine. Listen to your body. That's the best advice I can give you. But yeah, the 20th is a big day for a number of reasons, with all of these things happening at the same time. So this is now going to take us to the 21st. So we're going to see the moon oppose Neptune at the end of the 20th. The moon will then shift into Libra late at night. We're going to wake up in the morning on Sunday the 21st, and the moon is in Libra. Now this is important because when the moon's in Libra, we're watching Venus. And now Venus is coming into that exact conjunction with Chiron, where we're healing those wounds. 20 degrees means that something has to end before something begins. We need to purge, clear out, remove, deal with some kind of pain or some kind of trauma. And then the moon is going to continue to keep moving through Libra. And as it does, it's going to start coming into a conjunction with the South Node and opposing Mercury. My goodness. Well, watch this, guys. As the sun moves through Taurus, it's going to hit that square to Pluto. And Pluto's at a 2. So remember how I told you guys when planets hit 2 degrees, it's very powerful. because it kind of reflects something becoming solid, like a stone. It's a Taurus degree, so it's about food, money, banking. So what we're going to hear is with the moon going into Libra, opposing Mercury, that it's difficult. We're having lots of emotions. We're having moods. We're kind of feeling destabilized. We're kind of feeling like, oh, this is painful that we have to kind of like let go of this stability. We're letting go of relationships. We're shedding old skin in regards to our relationship to other people. We're finding it hard to communicate and relate because the moon in Libra, it wants to partner with people, right? It wants to say, hey, let's go and grab brunch together. Or like, let's go out, let's do this. And it's opposing Mercury, which means people are kind of like, you know what? I'm not really feeling relatable right now. Like I'm kind of going through something and, I don't really feel like being around other people. So watch for the moods that can happen with the South Node. Don't take it personally if people aren't communicating effectively, if they're not getting back to you, if people are kind of going through the motions of some kind of clearing in their life, they're reacting to something that's happening out in the world. And then we're going to see the Sun square Pluto. So like I said, that's going to be more about like power struggles, elimination of assets, physical changes. Because the Sun in Taurus is about physical embodiment. It's physical things, tangible things that we can eat, smell, spend, and hold. And that's squaring Pluto. So I think that we're going to hear more news about like money going digital, more talk of like future cashless societies. I saw a thing in Australia, it's already happening. Some woman in Australia went to the bank to make a withdrawal and the bank was like, we don't have cash. We don't have any money here. So I'm wondering, like, is this going to become like more major news in other parts of the world? Or are we going to start to see that we're, physical banking and resources are being challenged by this new shift in kind of innovation with what's going on with like both technology and society with Pluto and Aquarius? This is an opening square. So the Sun feels almost like, I don't want to say powerless, but it definitely feels like it's being challenged by Pluto. And Pluto's going to like slap back and be like, no. That's not how this is going to work. This is not how it's going to go. And so watch for the power struggles that can happen with other people. I think that really the meaning of the Sun square Pluto is both personally and collectively, it's profound, especially because we have not seen it at these degrees before. And it's kind of like where we're feeling like this tension between a desire for stability, right? Sun in Taurus, and security and material comfort, and the transformative kind of deep-rooted changes in power dynamics of Pluto and Aquarius. So on a personal level, it may indicate a period of intense personal growth and transformation. It's a time for individuals to feel compelled to confront their fears, insecurities, and past traumas in order to evolve and step into their personal power. But it's also a time for breaking down old structures in ways that no longer benefit us, it doesn't serve us individually, and we're embracing new ways of living that's more aligned with our authentic self. So this may involve challenging society's norms and expectations, forging your own unique path. But for the collective, it can represent a time of significant societal change and transformation. So it may signal a period of upheaval, of revolution, of old systems and structures that are dismantled to make way for something new, more equitable and sustainable ways of living. And this can manifest in a variety of different ways. It could be political systems, economic models, social norms. And it's a time where the collective is being called to confront and address issues of power, control, and inequality, and to work towards more inclusivity in regards to society. So in both personal and kind of collective contexts, this is a significant turning point. This is kind of like where it's like, okay, now that happened, now what? And it's about deep transformation and change. So I think it's really a call to let go of the old and embrace the new, even if the process is challenging, even if it feels like, especially like physically or financially, something is changing. And I think it's going to be about people realizing like, okay, I must change the way I'm spending money or the way that I'm consuming because that sun is kind of being hit by Pluto. Watch for the moon to continue to keep moving through. I mean, thankfully it is trining Pluto. So as it, comes into Libra and it opposes all this Aries, it's trining Pluto saying, the only way kind of through it is just kind of, focusing on your goals and staying headstrong and not being willing to kind of like let go. And when in doubt, calling a friend or somebody who can kind of support you in need. So then later in the evening, we will see the moon come into conjunction with the south node. This is late in the evening on Sunday, and then oppose Mercury. So this is where I think there could be some more challenges, would be Sunday evening, where people are going through their moods with the South Node moon. The opposition of Mercury retrograde is that relationships feel like they're breaking down because we're not sure if we're ready to communicate or talk. And on an individual level, we're still kind of going through our feelings. And a lot of us are kind of reeling from some of these really dramatic shifts that are happening this week. Take time to integrate. Don't take it personally. You know, if people are saying, hey, I just would rather hang out by myself, or I need some more time, don't feel the need to like rock the boat and try to kind of say, no, I want to be there for you, because individuals right now this week are really learning to develop the necessary personal skills to handle business on their own, and learning not to be codependent with other people, and learning not to rely on other people. And like for some of you guys, it's like, I'm fine with that. I don't want to be the person they call and complain to every week. I'm not going to jump in and save them anymore. So you might be on the other end of the spectrum where you're like, I am giving them that lesson. Here you go. And if that's you, that's totally fine. But I do think that the mood is going to be kind of like Sunday even into Monday. And something else I should really relate here is that now, you know, we're coming through now the last quarter square from when we had the solar eclipse. So the same way that I said at the beginning of the week, as you know, I think it was like Sunday, Monday, the moon's going through Cancer and it's squaring all this stuff. And that's the challenge. This is the buildup, because now the sun is in Taurus. This is the buildup to what will be a full moon in Scorpio, and like, you know, a little bit of like a inside information on that. That will be a full moon in Scorpio square Pluto. So that is going to be intense, you guys. So you're going to be feeling as you're going through this kind of like Sunday, Monday moon in Libra thing that you're like, what is happening? I feel like I am cleaning house with friendships and relationships and old versions of myself, and other people are losing it, and I got to stay in my lane. It's just as we're kind of coming up to that really complex T-square with that full moon, that's when everything really changes. And that's going to be about personal, emotional empowerment, internal power, that kind of feminine Mars, Scorpio energy, very deeply penetrative, and it's also about transformation. So I think that we're seeing so much kind of like static going on with other people, that this is putting your oxygen mask on first, focusing on how can I develop better ways of coping when other people are latching on to me, or learning to disengage from people who don't want to take responsibility within their relationship, you know, in this situation, like focusing more on how you can respond, and holding yourself accountable, and also learning to be like, if this isn't healthy for me, I'm taking space from it. And learning new ways to kind of, I guess, like heal yourself, right? So I know I was throwing a lot at you guys. I know that this is probably a lot to digest, but I will just tell you, like I said, on the surface, it doesn't look like there's a lot going on this week, other than, you know, the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. But in my opinion, this is like solar eclipse part 2. And to some extent, there's more of this coming, you know, after Mercury goes direct, and we're going to see Mars go into Aries. But I anticipate, you know, you guys let me know in the comments, come back to this next week and let me know how your week played out. But I anticipate this is going to be almost as active as the solar eclipse all week long. So I'm sending you guys lots of good vibes. Stay grounded, stay positive as you're going through this week. There's lots of resources on the channel. You can check out the Mercury retrograde video, the eclipse videos. We're going to be tackling and talking about the full moon in Scorpio next, I think. And we're also going to start getting ready to talk about Mars going into Aries, Venus going into Taurus. Finally, we're going to be kind of playing with some home field advantage as we're getting into May. So there's definitely going to be lots of support on the way. Let me know, how are you feeling with these energies, especially if you're somebody who's got planets within that like 18 to like 21 degrees of Aries. Like, are you in the flames with me? Let me know, how are you feeling? And what do you guys anticipate with these Jupiter-Uranus kind of aspects that are going on? What do you think the big boom is going to be? Where are you seeing it in your own life? And let's talk about what positive things could transpire from this, because I think we need a little bit of humor. We need a little bit of positivity here. What are the good things that you're anticipating that's coming in? I'd love to hear about that in the comments as well. I always appreciate you guys' comments. I can't always get back to everybody, but I do read them. And I just want to thank you guys for your likes, your comments, your shares. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video, and make sure you're subscribed. I will be back here on Tuesday. We're going to talk all about that full moon in Scorpio and what it means for all of us post this really intense part 2 eclipse week. If you guys like my content, you should check out my website at beyondtheveiledtarot.com. I sell personalized astrology calendars. I also created a really beautiful 12-month calendar for the astrology of 2024. I sell candles, and I also teach tarot and astrology. So if you guys want to learn how to read astrology like me, check out my Beginner's Astrology one-on-one course. Head over to beyondtheveiledtarot.com. While you're there, sign up for my newsletter. I won't spam you. You guys are only going to get emails when I have new stuff coming out. But definitely sign up for that, because we're going to have some other things going on this year that I'm going to be lecturing and teaching. And you guys can also book an appointment with me if you want there. I'm now booking in July and August of this year. So head over to beyondtheveiledtarot.com to check all that stuff out. Enjoy the week. Sending you guys so much love, so much support as we come through the other side next Sunday. Until next time, enjoy the rest of your weekend. You guys take care.